Ever feel like you're stuck in one of those waiting rooms? You
Right.
know, just watching everyone else get called in for their appointment
Oh, yeah?
with happily ever after,
Yeah.
while you're left kind of wondering, like, if your number's ever going to get called.
Right.
Yeah, waiting for marriage can sometimes feel like that,
Mm-hmm.
especially when that longing for connection just runs so deep.
Yeah, it's a universal human experience,
Yeah.
just yearning for companionship.
Right?
And it's something that people of faith,
Mm-hmm.
they've grappled with this for centuries.
It's true.
I mean, even these iconic figures in the Bible,
Right.
they had their own struggles with waiting.
Yeah. And that's actually what we're diving into today.
Right?
We're going to unpack 3 really powerful stories
Mhm.
from the Bible,
Yeah,
Sarah, Moses, and Saul.
right.
Each one, I think, offers a unique perspective
Mm.
on how impatience can really derail us
Yep.
and what we can learn about trusting God's plan,
Right.
even when it feels like time is just slipping away.
What's so fascinating about these stories
Yeah.
is they really highlight like the raw human emotions
Right.
involved in waiting.
Mhm.
These weren't superhuman figures
Right.
immune to doubt or frustration.
Right.
They were real people
Yeah.
wrestling with the same anxieties and desires that we face today.
So true.
Yeah.
So let's start with Sarah.
Okay.
Okay, so she and Abraham were promised a child,
Right.
a descendant who would become this great nation.
Mm-hmm.
But as years turned into a decade,
Yeah.
Sarah grew weary of waiting.
Right.
What emotions do you think were swirling in her heart during that time?
Oh, I imagine like a mix of longing,
Mm-hmm.
doubt,
Yeah,
maybe even a sense of injustice.
yeah.
Here she was faithful to God,
Right.
yet still waiting for the promise to be fulfilled.
Right.
It's easy to understand how that could lead to like some desperate measures.
Yeah, and that's precisely what happened
Oh, wow.
in Genesis 16.
Oh,
Sarah takes matters into her own hands, suggesting that Abraham have a child with her servant Hagar.
right.
It's almost as if she's trying to force God's hand
Mm.
to make the promise happen
Yeah.
on her timetable.
That's a classic example of what happens
Yeah.
when we try to manipulate circumstances. Instead of trusting God's timing,
Mm-hmm.
Sarah's plan backfired,
It could.
creating a rift in her family and a legacy of pain
Yeah.
that echoed through generations.
It's a powerful story.
Yeah.
Her story really makes you pause and think,
Well,
doesn't it?
It does.
It's like, how often do we try to help God along,
Yeah.
thinking we know better or that we can speed things up?
Mm-hmm.
And more often than not, we end up creating more problems than we solve.
Exactly.
Right.
It's a subtle but dangerous form of pride.
Yeah.
This belief that we have a better plan
Yeah.
to the creator of the universe.
It's so true.
Sarah's story reminds us that surrendering to God's timing
Mm-hmm.
requires relinquishing control,
Right.
which can be incredibly difficult,
Oh, yeah.
especially when the stakes feel so high.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Sarah's story is a cautionary tale
Yeah, okay.
about the dangers of impatience.
Right.
But what about Moses?
Okay.
He faced a different kind of waiting, right?
Yeah.
Leading the Israelites through the wilderness for 40 years,
Uh-huh.
dealing with their constant complaining.
Right?
I can't even imagine the pressure he was under.
Talk about a test of patience.
Right.
Moses was carrying the weight
Yeah.
of an entire nation's hopes and frustrations on his shoulders.
That's a lot of weight.
And in Numbers 20,
Okay.
we see that pressure reach a boiling point.
Oh, wow.
God instructs Moses to speak to a rock
Mm-hmm.
to bring forth water for the thirsty Israelite.
Wow.
But instead of obeying Moses,
Yeah.
in a moment of anger,
Uh-huh.
strikes the rock twice.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this seemingly small act of disobedience has
Oh.
huge consequences.
It does.
Moses is told he won't enter the promised land,
Wow.
the very place he's been leading the Israelites toward for decades.
Wow.
It's a stark reminder that even the most faithful leaders
Right.
can stumble when impatience takes over.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's true.
What's particularly striking about Moses' story
Yeah.
is that his impatience wasn't driven by
Mhm.
personal ambition or self-serving motives.
Okay.
He was genuinely trying to help the people,
Yeah.
but his frustration and anger
Yeah.
clouded his judgment.
Right.
Yeah, it raises an important question for us.
Okay.
How do we respond when external pressures,
Yeah.
whether from family societal expectations or even our own internal anxieties,
Mhm.
threaten to push us
Yeah.
toward impulsive actions?
That's such a relevant question.
Yeah.
For anyone who's ever felt that pressure
Right.
to perform, to
Yeah.
have it all together,
Right.
especially when it comes to relationships,
Right.
it's like we're so focused on pleasing everyone else
Mm.
that we forget to listen to what God is saying to
Yeah.
us individually.
Right.
Which brings us to our third example, King Saul.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Saul was a king facing immense pressure
Okay.
from his people and a looming threat from the
Yeah.
Philistine army.
Mm-hmm.
He was waiting for the prophet Samuel to arrive
Okay.
and offer a sacrifice.
Okay.
But Samuel was delayed.
Right.
Fearful of appearing weak
Yeah.
before his men,
Mm-hmm.
Saul went ahead and made the sacrifice himself.
Wow.
Again, a decision fueled by a fear of what others might think.
It's like he couldn't bear the uncertainty of waiting.
Right.
Yeah.
Or the potential judgment of his people.
Right.
And just like Moses,
Yeah.
his disobedience came at a steep price.
Yeah.
He lost his kingdom.
It really highlights the danger of allowing
Insecure.
fear and insecurity
Correct.
to dictate our actions, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All three of these stories,
Right.
Sarah, Moses, and Saul,
Yeah.
paint a vivid picture of how impatience
Right.
could lead to disastrous consequences.
Yeah.
But more importantly, they reveal the deeper heart issues at play.
So it's not just about being impatient for the sake of being impatient.
Exactly.
Right.
There's something more profound going on
Yeah.
beneath the surface.
Right.
Like impatience
Mm-hmm.
is a symptom of a deeper struggle,
Okay.
wouldn't you say?
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what we'll explore next, unpacking what impatience reveals
Okay.
about our hearts, our trust in God,
Mm-hmm.
and our understanding of his perfect timing.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've seen how impatience led Sarah, Moses, and even King Saul to make choices they later regretted.
Yeah.
But it's easy to judge their actions from a distance, right?
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to our own lives, those feelings of impatience
Yeah.
can be so intense,
Right.
so consuming,
Yeah.
that it's hard to see clearly.
That's because impatience often masks deeper struggles,
Okay.
fears, insecurity, a lack of trust.
Mm.
It's like a flashing warning light on the dashboard of our hearts,
Okay. I like that analogy.
signaling that something needs attention.
So if impatience is the symptom,
Yeah.
what are some of the underlying conditions
Okay.
that it might be pointing to?
Well, one of the most common
Mm-hmm.
is a distorted view of God's timing.
Okay.
We tend to think we know what's best,
Right.
that things should happen according to our schedule.
Right.
But Isaiah 55:8-9 reminds us that God's ways are higher than our ways.
Yeah.
His thoughts higher than our thoughts.
So it's not that God is dragging his feet
Right.
or trying to make things difficult for us.
Right.
It's more that he sees the bigger picture, the
Yep.
intricate tapestry of our lives
Yeah.
in a way that we simply can't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He knows the perfect moment
Mhm.
for each piece to fall into place,
Right.
for each blessing to unfold. And
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
that requires a season of waiting,
Right.
a time of preparation and refinement.
But that can be so hard to embrace,
It can.
especially when we're bombarded with messages that tell us to go for it,
Right.
seize the day. Don't wait for anyone's permission.
Uh-huh.
How do we reconcile those messages
Mm-hmm.
with the idea of surrendering to God's timing?
It's a delicate balance, isn't it?
It is.
There's a difference between passively sitting on the sidelines
Right.
and actively pursuing growth while trusting God's guidance.
Okay.
Think of Esther,
Mhm.
who went through a year-long process of beautification and preparation
Okay.
before she was presented to the king,
Right.
or Ruth, who patiently waited for Boaz to make a move,
Hmm.
honoring the cultural customs of her time.
So it's not about being passive
Right.
or resigning ourselves to a life of loneliness.
No.
It's about using this season to become the best versions of ourselves, to
Yeah.
cultivate the qualities that will make us ready for a healthy, thriving relationship
Mm-hmm.
when the time is right.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that preparation often involves confronting our own fears and insecurities.
It does.
What are the things that make you feel impatient or anxious in this season of waiting? What are the deeper heart issues
Yeah.
that God might be inviting you to address?
That's a powerful question.
Yeah.
It's so easy to focus on the external circumstances,
Right.
the lack of a partner, the societal pressures, the ticking biological clock.
Yeah.
But what if this season is actually about internal transformation?
What if it's about surrendering those fears and anxieties to God,
Okay.
allowing Him to heal the broken places in our hearts,
Mm,
and prepare us for the love we so deeply desire.
right.
That's where true peace and contentment are found,
Yeah.
not in the acquisition of a relationship,
Right.
but in the wholeness that comes from walking in step with God.
I love that. It's like that saying, bloom where you're planted.
Yeah,
The season of waiting isn't a punishment.
right.
It's an opportunity to grow, to deepen our roots, to become more resilient and vibrant.
And as we surrender to God's timing, something beautiful happens.
What's that?
Our focus shifts from what if
Okay.
to what now.
I like that.
We begin to see the present moment not as a waiting room,
Right.
but as a training ground,
Okay.
a place where we can cultivate the qualities
Mm-hmm.
that will make us thriving individuals
Right.
and eventually incredible partners.
So instead of obsessing over finding the one,
Yeah,
we can invest in becoming the best versions of ourselves,
Sure.
spiritually, emotionally, physically.
exactly.
But how do we actually do that?
Yeah.
Where do we even begin?
That's a great question, and that's where we'll pick up in part 3 of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll explore practical steps you can take right now
Okay.
to navigate this season with intentionality and grace,
Sounds good.
transforming impatience into a powerful catalyst
Okay.
for growth and transformation.
Okay, so we've talked about the dangers of impatience,
Right.
the importance of trusting God's timing, and the idea of using the season of waiting as an opportunity for growth.
Yeah.
But let's get down to brass tacks.
Okay.
What are some practical steps we can take to actually navigate this season with grace and purpose?
It all starts with deepening our relationship with God,
Okay.
spending time in prayer,
Right.
meditating on Scripture, and learning to discern His voice.
Mm-hmm.
These are the foundational practices that will help us stay grounded
Yeah.
and focused amidst the uncertainties of waiting.
It's like building that unshakable foundation of trust
Exactly.
we talked about earlier. The more we get to know God's character, His faithfulness, His love for us, the easier it becomes to surrender our anxieties and timelines to Him.
Think of it like tending a garden.
Okay.
You wouldn't expect a beautiful flower to bloom overnight, would you?
No.
It takes time nurturing the right conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Our relationship with God is the same way.
Right.
It requires intentionality,
Yeah.
consistency, and a willingness to let go of our need to control the outcome.
So how do we practically nurture that relationship? I mean, are we talking about like setting aside hours for prayer every day? Reading the entire Bible in a year? I think a lot of people feel intimidated by that. Like they don't have the time or the know-how to do it,
It
right?
doesn't have to be overwhelming.
Okay.
Start small.
Okay.
Maybe it's 5 minutes of prayer in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
reading a psalm before bed,
Okay.
listening to a worship song on your commute.
Right?
The key is to make it a consistent habit,
Okay.
a regular rhythm in your life.
Consistency over intensity.
Exactly.
Well, okay.
Like building those small daily deposits of faith
Yeah.
that will sustain us through the inevitable ups and downs of waiting.
And as you spend time with God, ask Him to reveal any areas in your life that need healing or transformation.
Good.
Maybe it's past hurts and insecurities, unhealthy patterns of relating to others. These are the things that can hinder our ability
Right.
to experience healthy, fulfilling relationships in the future.
Yeah. It's like doing some premarital counseling with God Himself.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's so easy to think, once I find a partner, all my problems will be solved.
Yeah.
But the reality is marriage doesn't fix us.
Right.
It refines us.
Yeah.
It brings our strengths and weaknesses into sharper focus.
So this season of singleness
Yeah.
is an incredible opportunity to do that inner work,
Yeah.
to become more self-aware,
Mm-hmm.
to develop emotional maturity,
Right.
and to cultivate the qualities that will make us not just good partners, but good people, period.
I like that.
And speaking of strength,
Okay.
don't underestimate the importance of taking care of yourself,
Right.
physically and emotionally.
Mm.
Exercise, eat healthy foods, get enough sleep, pursue hobbies that bring you joy.
Right.
These are all practical ways to nurture your well-being during this season.
It's easy to let those things slide
They are.
when we're feeling discouraged or overwhelmed,
Mhm.
but they're actually essential for maintaining our emotional resilience
Yeah.
and preventing burnout.
It's like putting on your own oxygen mask first
Right.
before helping others.
Another powerful way to navigate this season
Okay.
is by focusing on serving others.
Yes.
Get involved in your church, volunteer in your community.
Mm-hmm.
Find ways to use your gifts and talents to make a difference in the lives of those around you.
I love that.
It's like shifting our focus outward,
Right.
away from our own anxieties and longings, and onto the needs of others.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe in the process of serving, we'll discover new passions, new friendships, even, dare I say, a romantic connection.
It's not about going out and looking for love,
Okay.
but about living a life that is full and meaningful.
Right.
Regardless of our relationship status.
Right.
When we're pouring ourselves into things that matter, we become more attractive, more magnetic, more radiant from the inside out.
So to recap, we've got deepening our relationship with God, doing that inner work, taking care of ourselves, and serving others.
Yeah.
It's a holistic approach to waiting. One that focuses not just on finding a spouse, but on becoming the best versions of ourselves.
And ultimately, it's about surrendering to God's cosmic timing, trusting that He knows what's best for us, and that His plans for our lives are good.
It's not always easy,
No.
But I think we can all agree that a life lived in surrender to God is a life filled with peace, purpose, and yes, even joy, even in the midst of waiting.
So what will you choose today?
Right.
Will you give in to impatience and try to force your own timeline? Or will you embrace this season as an opportunity to grow, to deepen your faith, and to become the person God created you to be?
That's the question we want to leave you with today.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope it's encouraged you to see this season of waiting, not as a detour, but as a divine appointment, a time of preparation for something truly extraordinary.